Hey guys, it's Amanda. I'm gonna do this video about depression and self-mutilation and suicide because a lot of people, they judge it and they don't understand it. It's not something to be made fun of or joked about or judged, really. Everyone has it at some point in their life, and if they don't, then great. You know, that's awesome, you're lucky. And sadly, there's a lot of people who do have it. And for the people who don't have it, or haven't been around it, they don't understand it. If you just looked at me, you wouldn't know that I'm clinically depressed. If you just saw me at school, you would not know that I am clinically depressed. Because at school, I'm bubbly and happy and funny and spastic and really random and kind of a creep. Because I think creeping is fun. But you wouldn't know I'm clinically depressed. You would not know that I am on medication for it and that I go to therapy for it. You wouldn't know that I struggled with my life for a while. I had a hard time. I'm still having a hard time, but I've gotten help with it. And luckily I have friends who understand it and family that understand it and got me help with it. I did some research on depression and suicide and all this because I figured since I had it so badly, I needed to know why, or I needed to understand it better in order to overcome it. And now I hope this helps you guys with it. It helps you understand it. So, according to Judith Peacock, she wrote a book on self-mutilation and suicide, or an article, and she said about 12% of teens have depression. This got me thinking. You know, I was thinking, oh, that's not too bad. But when you put the numbers together, it's not good. And because of this high rate, it causes teens to think irrationally and jump to conclusions about situations. It makes it to where they can't easily filter their emotions and thought process. They can't easily filter what is actually their thought and emotion and what is just the depression. They can't control it. There's a triangular thing they have for depression. And at the top here is emotions. At one of the corners is actions. And at this corner, they have thoughts. So it starts with emotions, and that's the part that gets affected the most through depression. And once your emotions start getting affected by it, these other two processes come into play. And from emotions, we move to thoughts. In all cases, no one can control the thoughts that pop in their head, especially in times where they are extremely mad or angry or sad or really happy. You just can't control what pops in your head, but you can filter and choose what you do. That's a fact of thoughts. You cannot control what pops in your head when you watch something or when you hear somebody say this. If you think, if somebody says something, you're like, oh, that's so stupid. That's just something that pops in your head. You cannot control what that is, but you can control what you do about that thought. But when people have depression, it's harder for them to recognize what it is that they're thinking. It's harder for them to recognize that that's not the thoughts that they should be acting on. And that is what brings us to action. Okay, so actions have to involve one of two things in order to complete them. And that is initiate a thought or initiate an emotion. that starts off the whole process of action. And I guess basically, if you involve the thinking process into actions, you have to think about what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, and if it's not a if it's not an impulsive action, then, you know, what are the pros and cons to doing this? Is it going to backfire and blow up in my face, or will it not be a big deal? That's the process that you go through, whether you realize it or not. That is the process you go through before you make an action, when it's not impulsive. Now, when you have depression, your actions tend to be impulsive. And when you have impulsive actions, it's because your thoughts and your emotions cannot be filtered, and it causes them to just overwhelm, you know, your ability to filter out those feelings and realize what you're doing is not what should be done to handle the situation. Okay, so we just talked about the triangle: emotions, actions, and thoughts. So oftentimes, people who have depression who are familiar with self-mutilation, or affectionately known as cutting or burning, will try to grab a sharp or hot object in this very emotionally unstable and impulsive set of mind, and they will try to hurt themselves with it. This is not okay, and it is very much misunderstood. On more severe cases of depression, many people will find that they have reoccurring thoughts of death and suicide. They would think, how can I die? How would I want to die? How can I get away with killing myself? These are the thoughts that occur in people with severe depression. And sometimes they may even try to act on it, further than just cutting or burning themselves. So we were just talking about burning and cutting and self-mutilation. What does it usually mean if a person is doing that? Of course, it means they're depressed. Obviously, they have some kind of internal conflict that they're trying to channel and fix. So this author, Levincron, he said that if the person is only cutting or burning themselves, it's usually somebody who didn't have a good or strong relationship with their mother and father and wasn't able to trust them very much, if they felt abandoned on their own, etc. And by trying to cut or burn themselves, they're trying to somehow make this feeling of abandonment in their childhood go away, even at the expense of hurting themselves. But what teenagers fail to realize when they're cutting themselves is by doing this action, by cutting or burning themselves, what they fail to realize is that it's not making the feelings go away. It's not making the feelings of being hurt or abandoned go away. They think that by doing this, they are confronting the issue, and then afterwards, they won't have to deal with it. It's not doing that in the least bit at all. It only provides short-term relief for that person. That is why you see it continually happening, is because it only relieves your pain and stress for a short amount of time. It's like smoking. You smoke and you feel better for a little bit, but then you want to go back to it because the effect has worn off. That same type of mental addiction is occurrent in self-mutilators. So that's what you have to understand about somebody who does that. Why is everyone pointing it more towards teens and younger children rather than adults? Because adults do it too. And there's a simple answer to that. It's because teens and people younger than that don't have full life experience yet. They don't fully comprehend that once they're gone, it's permanent. They can never get it back. They can never change it. And in most cases, it is a cry for help. And what they don't understand is if they follow through with that cry for help, they aren't going to get the help that they need. They're going to be gone, and it's going to be permanent, and they cannot take it back. Once you've had more life experience, and once you're able to fully comprehend that death is permanent, you're more likely to try to find other ways to deal with your emotions and thoughts. You're more likely to understand, okay, this is not going to get me where I need to be able to thrive. This is not going to get my friends or family where they need to be. It's just not a healthy or good way to deal with what I'm going through, so I need to find a different way to deal with my emotions and stress. Another reason why it's pointed towards teens and children who are younger is because this is the time where you're the most confused and the most conflicted about what you want to do with your life, who you are as a person, where you want to go with your life, where do you fit in school, what clique are you in, what style of clothes do you like, what style of hair do you like, what music do you like, where do I fit in this world? That is the most confusing part about growing up, is finding out who you are, and a lot of times it puts stress on people, which leads to depression because they just can't comprehend that, you know? So, they're more likely to develop depression during these years because of everything changing and them trying to figure out who they are. But if you mix that depression, if you mix a teenager's depression with the hormones that they have going on and the constant stress they have with school and outside activities in life, that's a dangerously high stress level. So I'm pretty sure that's why that's why a lot of people are teaching us about it at this age. I'm 16 and I got depression when I was really young. That is why they are trying to teach us, because I used to try to kill myself all the time. I'll be open about it. I used to cut myself a lot. I would probably cut myself every day. And I did some other stuff too, but we won't go there. So that is why they point it towards teenagers. I think it's really important that people understand some of the ways that depression can be developed. Because if you know somebody who has this happen to them, then you can assume that if they start showing signs of depression, that they might have it, and consider talking to them about it. So one of the ways depression can be developed is simply the process of growing up, developing from child to young adult. Simply that time span can be stressful enough to give somebody depression. So that is probably the biggest reason why a lot of people have depression. It's just that little time span, something that happens within this time span just can trigger it. Another form that can cause development of depression is having something as horrible as abuse or neglect in your family. Having parents that abuse you or neglect you, ignore you, don't take care of you, most definitely cause depression. Because then you're feeling like maybe you're not good enough for their expectations, and you're not right. And it's something, you think that it's something with yourself that's wrong, and in reality it's not you at all, it's them. So that is another way that depression can be developed. Depression also occurs very strongly in people who have had a death or suicide in their own family, or from a friend. I had a friend named Zach who died when I was in 7th grade. He got killed by a drunk driver. And for the longest time, I think that's around the time I started getting truly depressed. One of my close friends got killed. So yeah. What are the signs of depression? How can you notice that someone might have depression? These are some of the signs of depression that I personally experienced along with some research that I did. Loss of interest in activities or hobbies, sadness, feeling of hopelessness, withdrawal from people and friends, that's a big one, lack of enthusiasm, also a big one, changes in eating or sleeping habits, that's a good way to know that they're starting depression, but that's also a symptom for other things, so you should really watch out for some of these other ones to see if they correspond. Frequent crying or easy tearfulness, fatigue, agitation, guilt is a big one, and thoughts of death or suicide. So those are the signs of depression. So what should you do and how should you approach somebody if you think they have depression? Well, first off, what you should do is you should talk to them first. Now, by talk to them, I don't mean go up to them and be like, are you depressed? Do you feel like hurting or killing yourself? Do you have feelings of killing yourself? No. That's not how it should be handled. If you feel like a friend or family member or somebody you know is having depression, what you should really do is go up to them and be like, hey, are you okay? I've noticed you've been seeming a bit down lately. Is there anything you want to talk about? And see if they open up to that. They're more likely to open up to that than the first option. And basically just talk to them and let them know that you're there for them, because somebody who has depression, who knows that they have a friend who's just there to listen and be there for them, means the world. It means that they would be more willing to get help with it and try to overcome their depression. So yeah. And then if they open up to you and say, yeah, I'm having depression issues, I've been feeling this lately and I don't know how to handle it, or it's kind of scaring me, that is a sure sign to go talk to a counselor or tell, your parents or an adult or a professional, go talk to a social worker and be there for them throughout the entire process if they're that close of a friend to you. And yeah, it wouldn't be very beneficial to be their friend and say, oh, I'm going to be here for you and I'm going to get you help, and then as soon as they get in the room with somebody, you're not there for them. So that is some really good ways to help somebody who you think has depression, and how to approach somebody who you think might have depression. So I hope this video helped educate you guys. And I want you all to know that everything that I've told you is fact, and that depression and suicide and self-mutilation is not something to be taken lightly. It is not something to be brushed off the shoulder and forgotten with. It's not something to be judged or made fun of, because it is a serious situation that happens to everybody from age X to, Y and Z. It is a serious thing, and I hope that this helped educate you guys. And I did my research, so I wasn't just giving a personal experience. If you guys have any other questions, you can subscribe and I'll add more videos. You can write me and we'll talk about it. Thanks.